When I learned my sister was pregnant, the first emotion I felt wasn't pride or joy, but fear. As I explained it to the cousin who told me the news, that child is going to be raised stupid. I hadn't spoken to my sister in over a decade, but my family was not one that prized education. I was often told that I'd never worked a day in my life, and that I didn't talk like a normal person. When I made the dean's list, my mother made me keep it a secret. My father insisted I needed to get a real job after college instead of going to grad school or joining academia. Growing up, I would ask my parents if I could learn how to play a musical instrument. This is not what they wanted to hear. I tried to sell it as a chance to be cool. Forget the violin or the piano. I could learn the guitar and join a band. It would be a chance to meet girls. Instead, I was signed up for sport after sport after sport to toughen me up. Eventually, the out-of-tune piano we kept in the living room was chopped up and used for firewood. That story always elicits reactions of abject horror from musician friends of mine. Their anti-intellectualism reached its pinnacle while I was in college. My sister's associate's degree was treated as equivalent to my bachelor's, and my mother explained my English major away as me being one of those. When my sister didn't get into the school I had attended, I was seen as somehow responsible. A few years later, I finally stopped speaking to all of them. My nephew and I did meet, if you can call it that. I've never understood why it's called a meeting when the other person is a baby. They're not going to remember. If anything, I was presented with my nephew. It was at the aforementioned cousin's wedding in Los Angeles, which my mother and sister flew 3,000 miles to crash after learning I would be attending. The bride was not happy about that. My mother did most of the talking. My sister talked about TV shows. They'd gone on a cruise to Hawaii in the years since we last spoke, but all they had to say about it was complaints about the food. I took a picture of my nephew to save on my phone. I noted at the time that he and I had the same eyes. I didn't know if I would ever see him again. That night, I tried to distract myself from the day's events with a Craigslist hookup I invited to my hotel room. Unfortunately, he worked with children and told me he was going to be running a face painting booth at a carnival the next day. When we started making out and getting undressed, I burst into tears. The next day, he wrote me an email that read, "I don't know what the drama is in your life, but I hope you see through it and end up feeling better," which made me feel worse. Not the most disastrous hookup I've ever had, but not my proudest moment either. When I got back to Chicago, I joked about kidnapping my nephew so that he would realize there's more to the world than a trailer park in New Jersey. I considered sending books, but I wasn't sure if my sister would intercept them or want me to have anything to do with her kid. Also, I didn't know their address. Despite the reassurances that my sister was a good mother from the few relatives with whom I still spoke, I wanted proof. Does she read to him, I asked. Is he vaccinated? No one could tell me anything. I thought for sure my sister was an anti-vaxxer or Trump supporter. I had no reason not to think these things. I didn't know if he even knew I existed, or if I was a cautionary tale or black sheep. Maybe I was some kind of boogeyman or ghost story. Did he ask about the tall man in old family photos who was around his mother's age? Maybe they dismissed all of his questions by saying, "We don't like to talk about him." I got back in touch with my mother after she was diagnosed with cancer. When I asked about my nephew, I finally learned that he was read to and did get all of his vaccinations. My mother acted like I was crazy to worry about such things, and I didn't correct her by illustrating how my concerns were justified. Older people have complained about younger people from the dawn of time, but they're the ones who get the chance to fix the mistakes that have been made. I get annoyed when people complain about entitled millennials. What do they feel entitled to? Jobs that pay, health care, and a planet that's not on fire? Dignity for all people? Good for them. I wish my generation had been brave enough to demand these things. Turns out, My nephew is learning how to play the guitar. He signed up for lessons after school behind my sister's back, and at a parent-teacher conference, the music teacher surprised her by saying her son should own a guitar. She bought him one. I can't say if she did that out of guilt, obligation, or to save face, but that kid is smarter at 7 than I was at 20. I still don't know if he knows anything about me, but that almost feels immaterial. I am happy to have been proven wrong, although now I'm uncomfortable with how jealous I am of a second grader. Thank you.